Hi y'all, I'm Sammy. A lot of you might know me from my activism on Capitol Hill. I also have a brand called The Wrath of Samson. I'm a non-binary disabled activist. And today on Netflix, the award-winning documentary called Crip Camp came out on Netflix, and I watched it, and I had a whole lot of feels, and I wanted to talk about my coming out story as coming out as disabled. Every year on Coming Out, National Coming Out Day, I share a little bit about myself that people may not know. I've come out about a lot of things over the years. I've come out as I came out as being queer. I came out as being trans. I came out as being non-binary. I'm pretty well versed in sharing parts of myself that may not be accepted by the general population. And one of the very common narratives in coming out in the queer community is that, you know, everyone around you kind of already knew when you were the last one to find out. And that actually wasn't the case for me. I knew from a pretty young age, and but I actually had that experience when it came to disability. So here's my story about figuring out that I was disabled. All right, picture it: Sicily, 1922. Kidding. It was actually about 2017, somewhere around there. I had been on Capitol Hill fighting the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which would take away what's more popularly known as Obamacare. And I was fighting for that because it would, if they repeal, they were at that point bringing forward Trump care, and had that passed, I would have lost my insurance and I literally would have died. And there were a lot of organizations that were working on that at the time. And so it was around 2017, and I was sitting in a Wild Buffalo Wings in down by the Navy Yard, which had become my kind of my hangout spot because I stayed at a hotel near there a lot whenever I'm doing actions on Capitol Hill. And I was there with a bunch of activists from Mass Adapt, the Massachusetts chapter of the disabled disability rights community organization called Adapt. And we were there having dinner, and I was talking with my friend Colleen, and she said, "So how long have you been in the disability community?" And I started to say, "Oh no, I'm not in the disability," and then I kind of stopped. And I looked down. Now, when I travel light because I never know where I'm going to be staying. And I literally was in my last clean outfit. And it wasn't clean anymore because at the time I had been having problems with catheterization. I was literally sitting in soiled clothes in my wheelchair, and I realized, fuck, I've been saying that I'm sick and not identifying as disabled because I wasn't born disabled, but I've been getting sicker and sicker as time goes on, and I realized, wow, like I've literally been, at that point in time, I'd been on Social Security disability for years, and I didn't connect, like I still didn't identify as disabled. I had originally been put on it for mental health reasons and a couple of physical conditions, but I still didn't see that as me being disabled because of my own internalized ableism. And I realized at that moment that holy crap, like I literally was sitting, like I had to, uh, I was about to catch a train back home in like an hour, and I had been having problems with. Literally, I couldn't urinate on my own at that point, and I had tubes in my body that I was having problems with. And I was in my wheelchair, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not disabled. I'm just medically complex. I'm sick. Um, because there are a lot of people that are worse off than I am because there is so much internalized ableism there. And I realized at that point, oh my God, I'm disabled. And it was like one of those things where like everyone around me was like, you know, duh. Like, how, like, I knew that I was queer, and it wasn't one of those kind of things when it came to my queerness, but it literally, I had the epiphany in Buffalo Wild Wings, surrounded by a bunch of my activists that I call family now, and you know, I I have mental health issues, I have learning disabilities, I have mobility issues. I use a rollator sometimes, I use a wheelchair. Sometimes I am able to walk, but my mobility fluctuates, but that doesn't make me any less disabled. And tonight, watching the Crip Camp, I had a lot of feelings around that because when I was 16, I was a counselor at a camp for people with developmental disabilities. But now, as a disabled person, like, I could be a camper myself. And so I had a lot of feelings about that. And what I really saw in that movie that was so prevalent to today is that people with this virus are realizing it can happen to anyone. It doesn't have to be, it could literally, your life could change in an instant with a car accident or getting shot. Or, this virus doesn't discriminate. It doesn't, you could be the next king of the next king of England and get the virus. It doesn't matter. And now everyone wants to be able to work from home. People with disabilities were asking to be able to do that before, and the companies were saying, no, you can't. That's not possible. Now it is, because it's affecting the wealthier people. And so I think that I'm hoping that this will allow for more people to realize the struggles that the disability community is going through, and why we need equality, why we need healthcare for all, why we need. One of the things I really struggled with Crip Camp is that a lot of the same chants and a lot of the same things they were fighting for back in the 70s and the 80s, we're still fighting for today. I've been on Capitol Hill fighting for the Disability Integration Act, which helped stop the forced institutionalization of people. And that's something that I've been scared of, because I need a high level of care at this point, but it's cheaper to keep me in my home than to put me into an institution. And I've been in an institution at age 25. I spent 2 months in a nursing home. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. I don't wish it on anyone, and I will fight to get this bill passed, but I'm seeing the exact same things we were dealing with 30 years ago. But if you really want to know the history of the disability rights movement, you really should watch Crip Camp. It's an amazing documentary, very well done. I saw my ancestors in there that I didn't know I had. Some of you know that I perform drag, and I've just recently come back into the drag scene because I stopped because I had gotten so sick. And I didn't think I could perform drag anymore. But now I do perform drags, and my drag name is Disability. And I incorporate my mobility devices, but I struggle with things like I can't do my own makeup anymore. This is about all I can do on my own because I'm losing the use of my hands and I'm also going blind, which makes putting on my makeup a lot harder. So I have to rely on a lot of other people, but I'm still able to do drag. And Steve in Crip Camp did an amazing performance from Rocky Horror, which is something that I absolutely love. And I'm so thankful that there were people that were doing this, 30 years ago, so that, the bars and nightclubs that I want to perform in are more likely to have ramps and elevators, because of the people that fought back in the 70s and 80s and are continuing to fight today. And so I'm hoping that with everything that's going on today, people realize that, it literally could be your mother, your brother, you. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow, and that people with disabilities are just like everybody else, and we deserve civil rights too. And so I highly recommend this documentary. And if you're a teacher, I highly recommend assigning it to your students. If you have any kind of history class, poli-sci class, sociology class, psychology class, it really is applicable in so many different areas, and I think it's something that everyone should see. So this is my first video I'm making on YouTube, in this decade. So forgive me if it's a little off kilter, and I am really thankful to have a community we watched the Crip Camp online and talked about it with some friends, even though we can't physically be in the same space. And it's really important for people to feel connected at this point, and just know that even though things are really chaotic right now, we're still fighting for our rights. We're still calling our legislators. We're still emailing. We're doing Twitter storms to make sure that the changes that need to be done are getting done. So don't think that just because we're all holed up that nothing's happening. You can still make a difference from home. Call your senators and call your Congress people, make sure that they are supporting the DIA and that they are fighting for the rights of disabled people during the pandemic. All right, stay safe, everyone. Thanks, and have a good night.